What is up, my friends? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Top Entrepreneur interview. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today's episode. Today we're in for a treat, man. This is a guy that I've admired and looked up to for years and years and years. This is a dude that's really been a lifelong entrepreneur, jumped into the real estate space, became the number one REMAX agent on planet Earth. Then he decided to make a shift, go to Keller Williams, became the number one Keller Williams agent on planet Earth, sold his real estate team. Now this is a guy that owns, we talk about this in the interview, but I think he owns and is invested in 28 different companies now. So this interview is mind-blowing, man. It's one that all of you guys should listen to. This is a guy that obviously knows his stuff. He's not, just a smart dude. He's a doer. He's proven it time and time again. One of the top dudes on the planet for two of the biggest companies that exist in the real estate space out there. Also an author, best-selling author. So today's interview is with Pat Hiban. Really excited to dive in. A lot of amazing nuggets here that's being delivered today. So real quick though, before we jump in, you guys, just want to plug our sponsors that make all of this possible. www.perfectstormnow.com, front-end lead generation software, very effective, very affordable. If you're not out there generating massive amounts of paid leads, effective, affordable, low-cost paid leads at a tenth of the cost of your Zillow leads, or generating massive free leads, check us out, man. It's the site I use. It's an amazing, amazing site. Also, our 90-day mastery bootcamp, right? So it's a 90-day experience, hardcore coaching, about 50 hours with me. It's a group experience. You can learn more there at www.90daymastery.com. If you're ready to take your business and your life to a whole new other level, jump into that program. Also, lastly, real quick before we jump into the interview, make sure that you guys are sharing the show. Our goal is to expand this show, to grow this show 2016 and make it where it's the biggest freaking juggernaut that exists out there with entrepreneur interviews, real estate agent interviews that exist in this space. The only way we can do that is by your guys' support, with you guys helping, not just listening to the episodes, but also sharing, letting everybody know that you think could gain from the show, benefit from the show, sharing this channel with them. Whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, GSDmode.com, I don't care how they watch or listen, just give them to watch and listen, right? So again, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Keep kicking ass, and we'll talk to you soon. What is up, my friends? Joshua Smith here with another GSD interview, where we interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top badasses that are out there dominating their space, that are doing big things on this planet, are choosing to go out there and create and live epic lives. So today, you guys, really, really excited to have this guest on. This has been a guy that I've been following for years, read all his literature, watched all his videos, learned so much from this guy. So really, really stoked and honored to have Pat Hiban on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Josh. Let's get shit done, baby.
That's it, dude. That's what it's all about, baby. So, dude, you're a guy that's accomplished so much, that continues to accomplish so much. You've got a lot going on today. But before we jump into what you're doing today, man, let's rewind the clocks. Let's go back to, high school, college, whatever that looks like. How did you end up as an entrepreneur? What was that journey like that led you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was growing up, I always had that work ethic. I was a family of five, and I was always the kid that, had a job at 14 or 15 and walked to work and all those cliche type stories. Of course, at that age, you're trading time. Well, at least I was trading time for money. I was a dishwasher at like 5 different restaurants and busboy and that sort of crap. And when I was 20 years old, I think I was like between my junior and senior year of college, I decided to go live at the beach. I live in Maryland, and the beach was Ocean City, Maryland. And I got a job slicing meats at a deli. And I remember vividly this scenario. I was making $4.25 an hour slicing meats, working like 40 hours a week. And a buddy of mine from college said that he got a gig on the boardwalk. It's like a area with all these arcades and cotton candy and junk food and kids running around and rides and stuff, where tons of people go every night and during the day. And he got this gig where he was on 100% commission, where he would hand out these coupons for free dinners, and the people get a free dinner if they if they go to take a tour of timeshares. So they go and take this tour, which is supposedly 1 hour, but between me and you, it was like a 3-hour tour. And we used to joke about it with the Gilligan's Island theme. We used to say, the 3-hour tour. And so anyways, to make a long story short, he said, he had this job and it was fun and blah, blah, blah. So I said, all right, I'll give it a try. So I went out on the boardwalk. The boss of the company said, Pat, I need you to do a couple of things. I need you to, number one, leave your sunglasses at home. I need you to wear a collared shirt, and I need you to look in the eye on your left. So if I'm facing you, stare in your eye to the left, to my left, and just stare at that eye while you're talking. And that's all I need you to do when you say this script. And I was like, well, I can do that. That's no problem. And so I went out on the boardwalk and I just started handing out these coupons. And then so the next day we went in and there was like maybe 50 kids, right? They're all college kids. And they had this big board in the front where they showed like how many people got people to take this 3-hour tour. And everyone had a number. And I'll never forget, my number was 101. And there was this other kid, his name was Danny. They used to call him the boy next door. He had like red hair, rosy cheeks, just very gregarious, and he always got, the number one spot every day. And the cool part was if you got the most people in for that day, you got an extra $50. So, make a long story short, I get there. There's this big crowd of kids. I'm way in the back. I don't know a soul. I'm number 101. I look up at the board. Danny's got 2 people he got in, so he got $40, which isn't bad for 5 hours or whatever on a boardwalk out in the sun. And up on the top is mine, and it says 101.5, which means I got 5 people in. That was $20 each. That's $100 and a $50 bonus. So I made $150. And this kid, Danny, looks at his buddies in the front, and he goes, who the fuck is 101? And I'm like in the back, and I'm like, hey, that's me, And so I had 2 realizations. Number one, that I made $150 in one day, where slicing meat, I was making about $140 in 1 week, right? $4 an hour times, 40 hours is $160. After tax, I was making like $120, right? And I made $150 in one day. And I had that huge, massive realization, number one. And number two, I had a realization that I had a genius or something that I'm good at, because I was never like athletic. I was terrible. I tried to play lacrosse in high school. I went in 10th grade. In 9th grade, I was 3rd string, and then in 10th grade, I got put back to 4th string, just because they, it was a politically correct school, and they didn't cut anybody. So I sucked at that. I wasn't like necessarily like the dude that got all the chicks. I wasn't. I felt like I didn't have much skill. And that day I realized, so maybe I got something, here. It's not just a coincidence that I got the winning number that day and the most on my first day. And all I did is get out there and like look people in the eye and convince them. So from that day forward, I never, ever, ever took a trading time for money job again. That was it. And that was 30 years ago.
Yeah. So then I know at some point you enter, I guess timeshares is real estate, but then you enter the residential real estate team. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but for a while, I believe that you were the number 1 Keller Williams agent on the planet, right? When I first met you, and this was like 7 years ago, I remember looking at your card, and it said that you'd close over $1 billion in closings. And I'm like, holy crap, like you were the first $1 billion agent I ever met. So what transitioned you into residential real estate? At what point did you get into that career?
Yeah, again, it was, and you mentioned it earlier, like you never really get into anything by design. It's kind of like the design of the universe. You just find, something that's working and you embrace it and go at it 100%. I'm the same way. So what happened was I got, again, I was never this standout kid. I got a 2.6 GPA in college with a degree in sociology. So, I was going to be a social worker or something. And I saw they were making like $35,000 a year. They weren't even hiring. So I was substitute teaching, for a little bit just to pay the bills. And then I just decided to get my real estate license because I knew that, number one, I wasn't going to be trading time for money, that I was going to be creating my own destiny. And number two, I wouldn't have a boss. I just hated bosses. After that one day at the beach, I just never really had a boss again. So I was like, I'm not getting a boss. So I got my license, and that was it. I ended up selling 10 houses my first year. I made $13,000 my first year. I still have that 1099 from the company. It was a little company called Grempler Realty, no longer in business. And that was it. And then from there, paid my dues, hustled, built a huge team, rung the bell at REMAX. I was the number one agent at REMAX in 2003, I believe, and then opened my own company, then joined Keller Williams, rung that bell upon joining or selling after joining, and then, continue to, ring different bells now. I have my podcast, Pat Hiban Interviews Real Estate Rock Stars. We're 3 days a week. I have my book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures, that audio version and the paper version and digital version. And I also own 15 companies that I own a small or a large portion of, plus probably about 30 other investment vehicles like rental properties and apartment buildings and stuff like that. And that was always my plan. My plan was, always had an end in mind. And my plan was to not work so hard. I didn't want to be that guy that's like chasing FSBOs at 78 years old. I mean, there were agents that I worked with over the years, and I'm like, oh my God, do me anything, but I don't want to be that sucker that's so desperate for a listing commission. So at 46, I sold my real estate team to my business partner, Mike Sloan. He's run it for the last 4 years. I'm 50 now, and he's done a great job with it. And I'm involved in a plethora of other stuff.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love it. So going back to the real estate business, because it's one of those businesses that 90% of agents fail in the first 3 years. We have an 80% year-over-year turnover rate, right? In 10 deals your first year, your average agent out there is doing, 3 or 4 a year? So that's a pretty epic first year, and then you just keep catapulting, man. At what point did you start growing your team? And also, what were some of the most challenging moments that you didn't think were going to be challenging when you entered the industry?
Wow. That's a great question. When I entered the industry, I think what people remember most about challenges in the real estate game are when they get their head kicked in, when they get their stomach stomped on by for instance, I had lunch with an old friend, used to be one of my agents, 10 years ago, and now he's out on his own, and had lunch with him yesterday. And one of the first things he said to me, he's like, I got a text this morning, and, I took this schmuck out, who's a friend of mine, and, I showed him like 12 houses up from $1 million to $1.5 million, and he sends me a text and says he's under contract with a builder without me. And, on one part of my mind, I thought to myself, well, I hate to say this, I thought, better you than me. Right? Like, I'm glad I'm not in that game anymore, right? Because that hurt, right? And I think that to answer your question, that's what hurt me. That my biggest challenges in real estate were getting back up after getting knocked down. I mean, I would lose listings that were like highly competitive. Like I'd go out 3 times, and the other agent would go out 3 times, and the people would think out loud with me on the phone about the differences between us. Then I have to go home at night and try to sleep. And then they'd go with the other guy, and it would eat me alive. I mean, and so trying to be direct and answering questions, my biggest challenges actually were mental. It wasn't never really, I always felt like I could make money. I knew how to make money, right? I never had a doubt about that. But my biggest challenges were just mentally getting through either getting kicked or two, getting to the next stage. And I think that's where a lot of agents struggle. Getting to the next stage, meaning like letting a listing agent take over all of your listing appointments, letting a buyer agent risk your mom's best friend who's going to buy a $700,000 house. Stuff like that were always my challenges.
Yeah, so, did you get to a point, and you're speaking kind of whether it's you call it rejection or when the clients, like you said, when you're just devastated and crushed with that, did you get to a point in your career where it didn't bug you anymore, where you're just like, okay, this is the game and it's just a numbers game, or was it something that you always had to deal with?
It stopped bugging me as much as I got disassociated with it, where I wasn't involved. Like, so long as I didn't meet the client and feel like I had a say in whether they went with us or not, I seemed to be fine. But if they brought me along for the listing appointment, or the guy stopped by the office and I met him, or I knew him, let's say I already knew him, let's say it was a neighbor of mine or something. I mean, there was points where I had to drive up my street and see another guy's sign after I had been talking to the people for a couple of years. So, as long as I wasn't involved personally, the more distance, to answer the question, that I had, the easier it is. That's just how I felt.
Yeah. So then you start growing this mega team. And as being a team leader myself, starting a team was a big shock. It was easy for me to go out there and sell real estate. And then I realized once I became a team leader, my ability to personally sell real estate had nothing to do with my successes. How good of an entrepreneur, how good of a leader that you are. When you transition into that, what were some of those, and I hate the word failures because it seems like failures are our best learning moments, right? That truly define us and become our greatest assets. But what were some of those struggles that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome once you transitioned from being a high producing agent to becoming a mega team leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I got a story. I mean, I had the buyer agent thing down because I resented working with buyers so much, because they started sucking like tons of time, and I started getting very short with buyers, meaning that, I'd be like, oh, why can't you make a decision? What the hell are you thinking about? Why are you spending half an hour in this house when you hate it? You said when we got out of the car, this won't work, but you still want to look at it. I got very impatient, And so I was done with that, and that was an easy transition. But where I struggled with the transition was the listings, because I felt like I was that guy that needed to be in there. It was my face on the sign. It was my name on the sign. They wanted to see me, which is true, right? They want to see you. You're almost like a celebrity, right? And they want to meet you and shake your hand. And the competition is coming themselves. The competition isn't sending an assistant, right? The competition is showing up. And the competition may be selling the same amount of houses you are, but is willing to show up because they're more willing to sell their soul to make money than you, right? That's how I saw it, right? So I struggled. I had those instances where, the best story was when my first listing agent was a girl named Charlotte Savoy, and she's a great agent now today. She's on her own, and she was my best buyer agent at the time. I said, Charlotte, I want you to go out and do all the listings. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 60 days. We're going to do 30 days together. Then we're going to do 30 days just you. And after each appointment, we're going to sit down together and critique it, right? So she said, okay, cool. So we did 30 days together, and then I said, well, you're not quite ready yet. Let's do 30 more days together. We did 30 more days together. During that time, we critiqued every listing appointment. Then the 60 days came up, and she says, okay, 60 days, I'm ready to go 100% on my own now. And just so happened that a neighbor, right, literally like 7 doors up, that I, again, have to drive by because I did a ton of houses in this neighborhood that I lived in. I was like the mayor of this neighborhood. And so this guy wants me to come talk to him about listing his house. And I see him at the bus stop, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh, man. Charlotte, let me go on this one with you. I know the guy personally, da 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 da. She's like, no, 60 days is 60 days. You need to let go, da 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 da. So I didn't sleep that night. She went on it. I called the guy. He's like, well, we're interviewing multiple agents. I called him again. Still haven't decided. I called him again. Still haven't decided. Finally, he calls Charlotte and not me, and he says, we really liked you, Charlotte, but we decided to go with another agent because Pat was over the top OCD calling us all the time after you left. And I was like, holy dirt, I need to figure out how to let go of this. So actually I didn't know what to do. So I picked up a phone book and I looked up shrinks. And I found a psychotherapist, that specializes in like separation anxiety or whatever. And I went to her and I paid for like 7 sessions with a shrink where she basically discovered why I was having trouble letting go, and worked me through the process and kind of changed my inner mind. And ever since then, I've been able to let go of things a lot easier.
Yep, love it, man. So, okay, you were number one with REMAX, number one then with Keller Williams. I mean, the two biggest juggernauts in the world. What does that look like? I mean, what was your team size when you were hitting those records and team size? What was your production like? Just to give our audience an idea of how many deals you were doing a year, man.
Yeah. Well, this was 10 years ago or so. So at that time it was 508 units was the best year we had. Average sale price of like, 490 or something, or 465 or something. So, we were doing 200 million several years in a row and over 500 units several years in a row. $5 million gross commission, between 1 and 1.5 net commission to me.
Yep, love it, man, love it. So at what point, dude, did you decide, hey, man, I'm done with this real estate game. Like, I'm going to transition out, sell my company, and start these other ventures? I mean, what was kind of happening internally, and what made you decide to do that?
It was kind of a multiple of things, but it was, number one, getting kicked really hard when the market crashed, right? I mean, we had 50-some people on the team. We had an 8,000 square foot space that we were locked in until 2010, that in 2007, we started really sucking wind and wanted out of the lease. So finally, when I got out from under a lot of liabilities and being in a situation, I mean, we had like subtenants, like we were using like maybe 25% of the space. And then we started having subtenants, but the market had crashed so bad in the commercial market that the subtenant was only willing to pay like 40% of what we were paying for rent. So, I was getting dogged every month. So it was that. And I finally got out from under all that. And I was like, I don't want to, I'm out, at times I just like, screw this. But my partner, Mike, was very loyal and very focused and very positive. And I said, Mike, why don't you just take it over? I'll still be involved. We'll split it 50-50, profits 50-50, but you start running with it. And he was able to take it from, a very low point with like, 100 and some deals to where it is now. Like last year we did over 300. So he's, doubled plus the business since he took it over, back again towards that 500 number. But so it was that. It was just the shitty times we were in. Plus, I also felt like, I had reached a stage in life where I wanted to be more of a mentor than a mentee. I had sucked so many mentors dry because I'm such a curious guy that I'm like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? And taken so much advice, and it worked for me so well. And I thought to myself, hey, I need to start giving back. So that's when I wrote my book. And then I went on a book tour. I went on a 7-month book tour, 53 cities, speaking to real estate agents, and started doing other things. So that's the answer to that question.
Yeah. So tell us about the book, man. It's I heard it was in Austin. Keller Williams mega. I've never been with Keller Williams, but I love their training, so I attend all their events. You were on stage speaking, and that's right when your book came out. I went and bought it immediately, read it cover to cover within 1 weekend. Phenomenal book, man. But tell our listeners a little bit about the book, and then where they can go find it, where they can pick it up, because it's a must read. If you're in the real estate business, it is an absolute must read.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called 6 Steps to 7 Figures. And basically what happened was a publisher had told me, put your heart and soul in the book, to everything, like the Pat Hiban experience, from make it chronological from the day you started when you sold 10 houses to 500 houses, right? And I did that, and it became like this 400-page manual. And then they kicked it back and they said, rewrite it and make it like 200 pages, make it an airplane read, like you said, like something you can get on an airplane and travel across the country and be finished with it when the flight's over. And so I went back to the drawing board, and what happened was it boiled down to like 6 things. It became less chronological and more like, at the end of the day, there's only 6 steps to $1 million. And if you follow these 6 steps, you'll get there. And that's how we didn't have the title until the very end, after we redid it. And so I outlined the 6 steps in it, and it's filled chock full of real life stories about me and my experience and my failures and my successes. And, there's like a story on every page. So you really get to see my life in the real estate game.
Yeah, and what's cool about it, what's the book cost, dude? $25?
Yeah, $15.95, and Amazon, I think they discounted even to like $12.
Yeah, so $15.95. You guys get to go spend $15.95 to get a book with millions and millions of dollars worth of ideas. It took you, I don't know how long your total career was and how many millions you sunk into growing your businesses, but you guys go get it right now. It's a must read. You won't regret it at all. I can promise you that. So going back to your real estate company, just one last quick question on that element of it, and then I want to kind of talk to you about, because you're a guy that has created a lot of wealth in your world, that set yourself up very well, which most Americans don't, right? So I want to kind of dig into that. But before we do that, I want to talk about culture, because I'm kind of for years I was a big stalker of yours, dude, on YouTube, watching your YouTube videos. And, I remember watching a video where you guys had a challenge, and you lost, and you let your teammates shave your head, right? And you guys just always seemed like you just had this amazing energy and culture with that. How important do you feel that was to your success when you had that real estate team?
Yeah, well, I thought it was a lot of my success because I always wanted to number one, have fun, but I wanted my people to have fun. And I almost felt like, okay, well, it got to a point where I wasn't doing much work. Right. I mean, like, I had 3 agents that did nothing but list houses. I had a negotiator who negotiated all the contracts. I had, just tons of people, and there was nothing left for me to do. And I felt like, so my job was to lead them. And the best way I could lead them was to be like massively authentic and just, give them what they want. And so we would set goals every month or every quarter. We would set a different goal, and then I would say, what do you want the prize to be? And and of course I didn't want the prize, although we did do some wild stuff with some trips. I didn't want the prize to be, hey, everybody gets $100,000 a split or anything like that. The cheapest, easiest way was, what do you want you can have any fun with me you want. So they picked, me doing at one point we had 4 or so couriers that did nothing but put up open house signs, because we used to have open houses on every house every Sunday, and we put up the signs like Thursdays and take them down on Mondays, and just like 20 signs each house. And so that was like the worst job in the company because you had to go in the middle of median strips and stuff like that. So at one point, they picked for me to do that job from like 7 in the morning to like 7 at night. And it was brutal, man. They like all the couriers got off, and I had to do all the signs. And we made a video of that, and that's on YouTube. Another time, they got to throw pies in my face. There's a video of that too. Everybody got to throw like 3 pies in my face. And then the ultimate, of course, was shave my head. And at that time, I had a lot of hair, great blonde hair, and they just shaved it off, and they just had a blast. And screwed up part is it never came back. It started coming back, but it was like gray and white, and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? So.
That's awesome, man. So, in your book, and I know you talk about this in 6 Steps to 7 Figures, but that time that when you and your wife became actual millionaires, and you celebrated with a bottle of wine in your condo or whatever it was, and but you earned a lot of wealth at an early age. Took a lot of work, a lot of hustle, a lot of grinding. But I heard a stat the other day that only 2% of Americans today can retire at the age of 65 without being reliant on their kids to take care of them. And that's after Social Security, all that. So it's something that people just don't want to talk about finances. They don't want to talk about, how to create wealth. It's almost like a negative thing out there. But if people don't wake up and start paying attention, they're going to be in some trouble. Right? It's not getting easier. So what are some things that you've done to create early wealth in your life and be able to retire at such a young age? And what were some of the maybe top recommendations that you'd have for our listeners to start setting themselves up?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And a guy I like to listen to, Sean Stevenson, has a saying that's resistance equals existence, right? And if you resist something, it's because it exists. It's true, right? And it's kind of what you're saying is that people don't like to talk about it, right? They don't like to talk about it because they're resisting it because it exists, because their bank account sucks and they, owe money on their furniture and, they look rich, but they're, broke. And so I think it's a massive plague that runs through the real estate industry. It's like, I don't believe anything anybody tells me. That's a real estate agent at a conference or something, and they tell me all this stuff, and I'm like, well, how much do you have in your bank account, or what's your net worth, So anyways, I started buying houses pretty much right away. I bought a couple of houses right after I got in the business. Then I went like 9 or 10 years without buying a house. If I have one major regret, I think is that I would have bought houses all through the 90s. As the market was just flat. The whole from like 90 to 2000, roughly 90 to 98 or something like that. The market was just flat, right? You could buy houses, you could rent houses. Nobody was killing it, but looking back, they would have been smoking deals, very affordable. Anyways, after that, I started buying more houses, kind of played like Monopoly, real life Monopoly. I took houses, sold them, traded the greenhouses in for red hotels. I bought shopping center. I bought an office building. I bought 8 different apartment complexes, not 100% owned by me, but with partners. Sometimes when you go to the big stuff, the best way to do it is with partners. And then in 2008, a friend of mine came to me and said he wanted to open a payroll company. He'd been in payroll like 15 years, and I trusted him, and so I gave him $200,000. He opened a company, and now there's like 60 employees. They're doing payroll in every state. They're just cranking it. They got some major accounts with some major franchises. Doing the payroll for all the franchisees across the nation. Anyways, make a long story short, I get over $5,000 a month, so 60 G's a year net to me, right, from that $200,000 investment. I've well made it back, and I've done 14 other ones like that since then. So I became kind of like a mini hedge fund or mini kind of angel investor. Some of aren't, most of them aren't as great as that as far as consistent dividends. Some are equity plays, meaning one I put 100 grand into, and if it sold today, I'd get over $1 million. But it would have to sell. I don't get any dividends from it. So it's a different type of play, and when it has to sell, I can't control whether it sells or not, or the owner's willing to sell it. He may never sell it, but there's value there. So now I play around with that, and I've got a couple other companies. I've got the podcast and the intellectual property, which is something I'm going to be building on this year. My only intellectual property is the audio book and my book, but I want to build some stuff kind of like you did. And I have a mastermind company, GoBundance, which I own 25% of. I opened it with several other multi-millionaires who kind of wanted to be mentors to men specifically who want to do epic stuff, like do really fun, like race Formula One cars, or drive a tank through a house or whatever, but also want to talk about money and how to make more money. And so I have that, and that's really fun. And so anyways, I'm doing a ton of stuff.
Yeah. So how do you pick and choose a company to invest in? Because sometimes we can just get emotionally attached to something, and then we get burned and lose everything, right? So do you have a formula, or how do you protect yourself to make sure that you're not making a bad investment? Because like a payroll company, dude, that's something that you've never ran before, right? So
yeah.
How are you analyzing these and knowing that it's a good place to park your money?
For me, it's because I don't have that degree in finance or whatever. So for me, it's really about the people. Do I think this guy or this girl is a quality guy, and has had success in the past? People generally, if they built a company to X, they're probably going to be able to do it again. If they have had success in their past, they're probably going to be successful in their future. You would hope. And so I really kind of bet, to answer the question, on people. It's certainly not by category. Some of these, like I've invested in 4 marijuana companies, 3, and so I think that's an ascending market, meaning it's a market out of my control that is just going to happen. If you think about 50 years from now, or 50 years ago, how many liquor stores there were, right? And how many exist today, which every block has a liquor store, and at Prohibition there were none, right? If I had started Bacardi or something back then, it would be incredible. So I kind of feel that there's an ascension that has to happen there. So I'm playing on that, and not so much the people. But here's the thing: the jury's not out. I mean, I could be 85 years old, sitting on the front porch of my mobile home, thinking, that was the worst play I ever did. The safe bet, right? And I still do plenty of this, is the real estate, and the safe bet is the single family houses, because I've had some apartments that I've done well on, but I just had one last year, within the last 30 days that we sold. I lost $300,000 on. Yeah. Personally, I put $430 into it, and I'm getting back $130, and that's my worst deal. So some of that happens. It's not all rosy, but generally what I'm finding is the stuff that pays me solid every month that I can consist on is all these little rental properties. I have a ton in Baltimore City that I rent Section 8. I have a bunch at University of Maryland that I rent out to sororities and college students there, and that sort of stuff is consistent. The other stuff is fun, and it could make me very rich. It could 50 or 100x my money, where with real estate, it's going to be 1 + 1 = 2.25. Yeah. With some of this other stuff, it could be 1 + 1 = 500, or it could be 1 + 1 = 0.
Yep, love it, man. So, one of the other things that I really, really admire about you and look up to you for is you've been able to go out there and create all these successful businesses. But you're also really involved with your family. You're also really involved with your health, man. I see, on top of mountains in Africa, where doing all this crazy stuff, man. So, but it's something that a lot of male entrepreneurs struggle with. That they let go. They neglect their kids. Their marriages go to the wayside. Their health goes to the wayside. How have you been able to successfully balance all of this? I don't know if there is such a thing as balance, but how have you been able to make sure that you're not an absentee father or husband, and your health isn't getting neglected?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is time management. I mean, time management and priorities. I mean, I have a tattoo. I'll show it to you since we're on video. It says love is spelled Time, because my kids, I used to come home with these goals, and I'd be like, hey, I sold 60 houses last year, and I want to sell 75 next year. And my wife would be, well, what do Heather and Kaylee think about that goal? And they're like 4 and 6. They're like, well, they don't give a crap about that goal, right? They don't know, they don't care. All they want is time, Time, right? They don't want a new crib, or a new, bicycle, right? The bike they have is fine, it works. So I kind of learned early on that that focus and that priority. So that's why how I did that, and then the health is the same way. I started. Here's the.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Love it.
And that is kids crayon, kids crayon letters at the bottom, and the birthstones of my kids, birthstone colors of my kids. So anyway, so it's time management and priority. I was looking at, you look at guys like Donnie Wahlberg, right? I mean, not Donnie, Mark Wahlberg, right? The dude's like 56 or something ridiculous, and he's like,
is he that old?
He's old, man, and he looks like he's 25.
Yeah.
I mean, or Tom Cruise, or some of these guys, and you're like, what? That's a body double. That's not him, but it's him. And the key with that is just one word again: consistency. Right? Consistency. Like, dude, if you do hot yoga every day or 5 days a week, you're gonna look good. If you meet a trainer 3 times a week, like Wahlberg, I'm sure he has a trainer that shows up to his house every day, right? It's consistency. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's consistency. You just gotta keep doing it and make it a priority. Obviously, time management. If you're managing your time so you can have that consistent trainer or yoga class or whatever it is, and you can manage your time so that you can have time with your kids. Because love is spelled time, nothing else. That's it. No one ever, when you die, your kids aren't going to do a eulogy that's like, oh, my dad was so great. He was great at making money. I mean, just think how that feels, right?
Yep.
So, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love making money, and I love having money, and I love everything about money and business. But you don't need to trade time for money. That's where most people get it wrong. You don't need to trade time for money.
Yep. Love it, man. Love it. So real quick, before I forget to ask, where do people go learn more about your podcast? Because you've got an awesome podcast where you're very similar to the GSD Mode podcast that you guys are listening to right now, where Pat releases 3 interviews. I'm actually going to be on his podcast as soon as we hang up here, where he releases 3 episodes of top producing agents all over the planet a week as well. So how do they go check out your podcast? Because it's absolutely a must listen.
Yeah. Well, Hiban Digital. HibanDigital.com.
Awesome. So one last question for you. I find that good seems to be the worst enemy to greatness. It's so easy to get caught up in this, good enough, and get comfortable and stop pushing. What do you do in your world to keep leveling up, to making sure that you're not being comfortable or just settling for good enough and always reaching for greatness? I mean, what are some things that you personally do to continue that go? Because you're in a position right now where you very easily just say, haven't done, right? So what keeps you going?
Great question, and I think it's accountability. I'm surrounded by other millionaires or successful people, and some are actually mentees, actually that might not be successful yet, but that want to be, that set goals, right? And also people that are a lot richer than me that set goals. And I try to, for instance, tomorrow I'm going on a bike ride with two other guys. One non-real estate guys that own two companies, random companies, and we're gonna go ride bikes, and then we're gonna park the bikes, go to a coffee shop, and go over our 2016 goals. They're gonna tell me how much they want to weigh this year and what trips they want to go on with their families and blah blah blah. And I'm gonna tell them the same thing. And then throughout the year, we'll keep each other accountable. And I've always done that. And I think that the more people you do that with, the more accountable and the more successful you'll be. And that's why we created GoBundance, is because we wanted to create, we have like 130 guys that get together and do that same thing now in epic places. And it works really well. So that's the answer to that question.
Yep, love it, man, love it. So, this podcast was created, as I'm sure your podcast was as well, to go out there and provide inspiration, motivation, but as well as tactical, information from doers like yourself, people that are out there doing it big. It seems like there's so much information out there today, but a lot of the people delivering the information have never built what they're teaching on themselves, right? So I love just going out there and hearing from the doers and helping educate the industry from amazing minds like yours. With that being said, do you have any last words of inspiration, motivation that you'd like to leave our listeners with so they can go out there and create an epic life like you've created? I mean, that they know that they truly want and deserve.
My favorite quote ever comes from As a Man Thinketh, James Allen's book, and it's you cannot dream within and stand still without. And I think what James meant by that is it's not just about dreaming, but it's about dreaming over and over again, almost obsessively, And the way you do that is, number one, you write it down, and then you read it, not just on January 2nd or January 1st, but you read it like every day or every other day. You affirm it, whatever case may be. I'm big into affirmations, where I read my goals into my cell phone and listen to them on my Bluetooth. Some people keep them in a journal and just flip to them every day and then check it off after they do it. So the key is, whatever goals you have, write them down, and then affirm them either by saying them out loud, or listening to them, or reading them on a regular basis, and they'll come true. You can't dream within over and over again and stand still without. It's impossible, right? It's impossible to just keep thinking about something without, taking action eventually.
Yep. Love it, man. Powerful words. And to our listener base, I know we end every podcast with this, but information without implementation is the start of delusion. Information is not power. It's taking that information, implementing, taking massive action that creates power in your world. So, you guys just heard from the top REMAX, top Keller Williams agent on planet Earth, uber successful entrepreneur. So take some of some of the advice that Pat gave today, implement in your business to go out there and create that life that you know that you want and you deserve. Also, go buy Pat's book right now. Don't wait. Just go right now. Jump on 6 Steps to 7 Figures. Go buy it right now. Like I said, you won't be disappointed. And Pat, my friend, man, this has been a huge honor. Greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here, man. This has been a lot of fun.
My fun, Josh. This has been a blast. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you guys. We'll see you next time.